Greetings and salutations, everyone, and welcome to, depending on wherever you may live or however you decide to look at your clock, this early morning or middle of the night bonus upload. Before we jump into it, a couple links. As many of you know, I rely on Patreon, PayPal, channel membership, and the merch to help the channel to continue to grow and go. Links to Patreon, PayPal, and channel membership is in the description below. Merch displayed directly under the video. Also, Dogman Frightening Encounters, Volume 1 through 3, the audiobook versions. They were written and researched by Tom Lyons, narrated and produced by me, Jeff Nadolny. Those audiobooks are available on Audible, Amazon, and iTunes, links to which are also in the description as well. And finally, last but definitely not least, if you'd really like to help support the channel to continue to grow and go, simply subscribe. It does not cost you a cent. Click the like button, takes half a second. If you don't want to miss out on any of the informative uploads I put out daily, click that bell icon, and folks, please leave a comment. Why? Well, because all these things really do help the channel to continue to grow and go. And yes, folks, they definitely do matter. Now, everyone, I have taken far too much of your time. Let's jump in to this middle of the night or early morning bonus upload. Shall we? Today's first part of the upload. 10 or so years ago, I was driving with my brother in Virginia Beach. It was late at night, and we were going to grab some food. We were the only car on the road, which wasn't really abnormal due to the time of the night. The right side of the road was wooded with trees, and on the left was a fence that ran parallel with the road. A giant wolf-like creature ran full speed in front of the car. It came from the right wooded area and was booking it towards the fence. This thing was at least 12 feet tall, minimum. It was hunched over, running insanely fast on its back legs. The legs were bent backward and extremely muscular. The only way I can describe it was they were bent backwards in the way that demon legs are depicted. The legs were furless, except for near the bottom where there were patches of fur. It was wearing a brown hooded cloak that was tattered along the bottom. The hood covered its head and midsection, leaving its legs fully exposed. Some sort of elongated snout was emerging from the front of the hood. It was square like a wolf's and had fur. The thing never turned to look at us. It was just running toward the fence, jumped, and cleared it. I've never seen anything jump so high. I spent the next couple of months trying to process what I saw. I thought there were some kind of logical explanation until my brother said, "Did you see that?" and described in detail exactly what I had seen. The only thing that differed was he saw what he described as long claws emerging from the front of the cloak. Seeing this thing terrified me. 10 years later, I'm still terrified. Any ideas of what it was? The cloak and the backward legs were something I really focused on. The cloak was cloth, and I'm certain it was not fur or anything else. Today's second part of the upload. In 2014, a very good friend of mine and a local swamp rat told me about some unusual findings he had run across earlier in the day, in the form of some dead hogs. The two of us were at a boat ramp having this conversation, and he offered to run me back over to where they were, to have a look for myself. So we jumped back into his boat and headed over to where he had found them. Now, Honey Island Swamp covers about 135 square miles of Slidell, and a fair amount of locals use it as a resource for food and to make a few bucks. He brought us straight away to the area where he nosed the boat into the shore, and after only a few steps, there they were. There were 2 wild hogs, split open up the middle with all the organs missing, and the rest of their bodies were completely intact and unmolested. They were not a day old, if that. with the mere fact that no gators or anything else had taken them being more than a little bit odd. Their undersides were splayed open, with what appeared to be a rip rather than a cut by a knife's blade. About 30 feet away from where we were was an old elevated tree stand that hadn't been used in many years. My friend said to me, "Come over here and have a look at these tracks." Only a few steps away from where the hogs lay, the ground was very damp with no grass on it. I only mention this because the hogs' bodies were laying on some very thick and matted swamp grass. We were now looking down on many tracks, both coming toward the hog and leading away from them. It looked like a gigantic alligator had laid them down, but they were enormous and all the same shape. An alligator's front and rear feet are slightly different, and their body also leaves an evidential trace or slide on the ground as they move, which was not present here. These were huge tracks with 3 toes and what appeared to be a prong or claw at the rear that had made a distinct hole in the rear of each print, as whatever this was walked back and forth. Neither of us had ever heard or known of anything that just ate organ meats and left the carcass behind. And I'm here to tell you, with all the gators in here, it was a miracle in and of itself that these hogs were left untouched on the bank close to the water for what was many hours. I didn't even think they would be here when we got back over, but they were. Both the hogs' necks were broken, and there were what appeared to be several puncture marks along the upper backs, as though claws had squeezed in on them while being grasped. My friend asked what I thought of the whole thing, and I told him that it had to be a rougarou, or the Honey Island swamp monster. We walked over to a tree stand, and it was perfectly intact, only being somewhat overgrown from years of not being used. There were many blinds in here that old-timers used, and having died, they were left standing. Over the next couple of weeks, my friend and I kicked around the idea of trying to bait whatever did this. So it was that we shot up about 6 nutria and quartered a hog to use as bait. We went back to the stand on Tuesday evening, and having cleared it of all debris, we strung up all the bait on ropes around the stand, hanging all the pieces about 6 to 8 feet from the ground. This way, not even a big gator could pull them down. That night, as the sun dipped below the horizon, the swamp came alive with noise as we sat in the stand and waited. It was at about midnight that we heard what sounded like a distant roar, which neither of us could identify. About an hour later, we heard a scream which sounded like a woman in a horror movie erupt from the forest off to the north. Then everything went silent. It was like someone turned the switch off. Not even a frog was croaking. On a couple occasions, we had signaled each other after hearing what sounded like some movement, but we dared not to turn the flashlights on and scare off whatever this was. I had thought that I saw a dark mass a couple of times, but with the woods being so dark, it was virtually impossible to discern what it was. At about 4 in the morning, the woods began to come alive with noise again, and before we knew it, the sun was rising in the east. My friend was the first to notice that the hanging hog was gone, and what we had hung had no organs in it whatsoever. All of the nutrias were still hanging from the ropes as we had left them. Climbing down from the stand, and now standing where the hog had been hung, the very strange footprints were present on the ground below where the hog had been hanging. and the entire hog and rope were gone, apparently having been untied from the limb. If it was the same creature that we heard screaming and howling, it also had the ability to untie a knot. We left the swamp that morning, shaking our heads, and left it at that. I knew everyone would be interested in this, and so there you have it. Make of it whatever you will. As if all what I have told you isn't strange enough, to me, the fact that the hogs had been left untouched while lying close to the water's edge for many hours was the weirdest part. A gator will sniff out small pieces of chicken hanging from a limb and come and eat it rather quickly. And yet, here were two hogs lying gutted in the gator's home turf. But they hadn't been eaten as so much as a nibble. Your guess would be as good as mine. Today's third part of the upload. In 1973, a logging crew working in British Columbia had several encounters with a feline-like entity. It started when they began hearing strange hooting sounds coming from the woods around them. The sounds were unnerving, unlike anything with which they were familiar. They also found unusual cat-like footprints in the fresh mud. Shortly thereafter, the foreman, a man named Woods, was walking through an area known as Cedar Swamp when the hooting sound came from so close by that he ran terrified back to the safety of his caterpillar. From then on, Woods carried a pistol when he was on site. He finally got to see the creature one day, not long after he was driving the caterpillar. He heard a noise from behind him. Turning to look, he saw a tawny-colored creature that he first took to be a mountain lion as it leapt down from the trees. He was stunned when it landed on its back legs, stretched out as if it had just woken from a nice nap, then jumped across the skid into a tree on the opposite side. It all happened so quick, he later said, but he was sure that what he saw resembled some kind of bizarre cross between a cat and an ape. Today's fourth part of the upload. Another fantastic man-like feline appeared in Kansas in 1998. Ray Jones, a woodcarver and inhumanoid eyewitness, had retired from the farm on the outskirts of central Kansas City to raise his garden, tend to his animals, and render his sculptures in peace. But peace is the last thing he got. He became a victim of an inhumanoid attack. One night in June of '98, while I was working late in the outbuilding I had converted into my woodcarving studio, I thought I heard Elsa or Esther, my two Guernsey cows, making those kinds of spooked sounds that cattle make when something strange is troubling them. Buster, my old Airedale, sat up and growled, and then the geese down at the pond cut loose, squawking and trumpeting like all Billy hell. There were no watchdogs as good as geese, 'cause they are so dangled territorial. Deciding to investigate, Jones put down his tools and stepped outside. There was a full moon overhead and visibility was excellent. Then he heard the chickens raising hell in the henhouse and figured that some stray animal, a dog or a cat, was after them. He grabbed a stick and walked to the doorway of the henhouse, waving it about and shouting threats to intimidate any stray four-legged beast that may be inside molesting his poultry. He failed miserably as it turned out. The beast that awaited him inside the henhouse was not intimidated at all. Although it was almost completely dark in the henhouse, Jones later stated, "I felt the hair stand up on the back of my neck when I saw something dark stand up and growl back at me. I'm 5'11", and this thing was as tall as I am. Then it charged me, knocking me flat, placing its paws on my chest and looking down at me. I nearly had a heart attack when I found myself staring into the open jaws and pointed fangs of a black panther. I could feel and smell its feline breath on my face as it sat on my chest, sizing me up for a meal. At that point, Buster entered the scene, barking ferociously at the impossible beast that had pinned me down. Jones stated that he was more worried about his dog than himself, realizing that a single swipe from the beast's razor-like claws could have sliced the poor Buster into hamburger. Then, inexplicably, it rolled off of me. I swear it stood upright on its hind legs before it dropped back down onto all fours and ran off into the night. Jones immediately called the sheriff to report the incident and warn others that a big cat was on the loose. He was told that there were no black panthers in Kansas, a fact of which he was already aware of, and there had been no cougar sightings for decades. When the deputy did finally arrive on the scene, he chuckled at Jones and opted that he had seen a tomcat. Jones stated that he always knew exactly what he saw. A black panther capable of bipedal movement on its hind legs like a man, a cat man. Fortunately, there were no other reports of a creature in the area, and I guess you just jump back to wherever the nightmare came from.
That's human. Listening, that's not human. It's not a human. That face is hearing first, but no. That is not a human.
Oh my God.
Well, there you have it, folks. This early morning, middle of the night bonus. I hope you all enjoyed it as much as I enjoyed sharing it with you. Thank you all for supporting the channel. It is, after all, your support that keeps the channel growing and going, and honestly what gives people a chance and a place to share their experiences and theories judgment-free, just simply treated with the respect that we all deserve. Thank you. Everyone, please stay safe, happy, healthy, and ever vigilant, keeping an eye on our children, our pets, our family, and friends. These creatures are real. They are out there and dangerous. Share this information with those you love and care about, and it may just help save their lives someday. Until next time, never stop asking questions, never stop searching for the truth, and God bless.